Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here at TigerTank12, however you call me, I don't really care, and welcome back to World of Tanks, where we are going to be reviewing the legendary IS-6 tank. This was one of the premium tanks when it was released first in the year 2012 or 13, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not entirely sure when it was released again. Completely wrecked tier 8 matchmaking. This tank, when it was released, destroyed so much in the game that it was just as bad as when the Object 252U came out. It has had several different iterations. It was nerfed, it was buffed, it was nerfed, it was buffed. So now we have a kind of different vehicle than it used to be previously. It has gotten a major update when it got the HD model, and it was really bad at certain times, at certain places, against certain vehicles. And it is actually a preferential matchmaking vehicle. You can still buy this tank in the tech tree today, since it's one of those tier 6, tier 8 premium tanks that you can still buy, and you do not have to get in the store for real money, but you can actually buy for gold if you have a lot of gold lying around. And today we're going to be seeing or answering the question if the IS-6 is worth your money in the year 2021. Now, I just made this review. I just made the entire thing. I talked about all the characteristics. I talked about everything just like 15 minutes ago. The problem is I started playing the games, right, obviously, to have some gameplay to show you guys. And I noticed, wait a minute, this is a preferential matchmaking tank. I completely forgot about that. Because I haven't played my IS-6 in such a long time, I completely forgot about that. And I was really surprised about all the statistics on this vehicle, and then it hit me. Obviously, it's a preferential matchmaking vehicle, so it's not going to be facing tier 10 vehicles. It's maximum going to be facing tier 9 vehicles, and thus I have to take that into regard. Completely forgot that, didn't talk about it, so I have to remake this review. So we're going to do that right now, right here. Bear with me. We're going to go through the characteristics. We're going to be taking a look back at history, how this IS-6 came to be, what it was when it first was introduced into the game, and what its current standing is in the game now in the year 2021. So, I have a couple of Soviet heavy tanks right now in my garage, as you can see. These are all the vehicles that I currently own of the Soviet tech tree, like the heavy tech tree. You can see some of them are premium, for example, the IS-3A, the IS-6, Object, 252U Defender, the 703 version 2, the 252U, the normal one without the skin, and the KV-5. These are the tier 8 premium heavy tanks or Soviet heavy tanks that I do currently own. There are obviously some other ones, the IS-5A, for example, over here, which I do own as well. I completely forgot about that to point it out. And also the Kreslavsky, the KV-4 Kreslavsky, which is actually going to be getting a buff. So, the IS-6, when it was first introduced in World of Tanks in the year 2013 or 12, as always, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of was a home wrecker. It came into the game where the KV-5 was the only Soviet tier 8 heavy tank, and the KV-5, you knew the deal, the R2D2 turret at the front. People were side scraping. It was kind of a funny tank. It had quite a lot of armor still back then, but it wasn't really, let's say, a solid choice to have a certain amount of games in where you knew what the outcome was going to be like. The IS-6, on the other hand, was just a vehicle to do that. It is still, or it was back in the days, very consistent at being a real pain in the ass for tier 7, tier 8, tier 6 vehicles, and tier 5s. Because I remember I think matchmaking was going all the way to tier, like way back in time, matchmaking was going from tier 5 to tier 10. So you had like M4 Shermans fighting Mouses. I remember that, but they changed that in early 2011-12, where they actually limited it to, I think, 3 tiers. So like you had tier 5, 6, 7, 8. So you had 4 tiers that could fight against each other. And then they obviously limited it to just 6, 7, 8 with the 2-tier max difference that you can have. So when this tank came out in the year, you were going up against tier 5 vehicles, tier 6 and tier 7s. And there was, this meta that armor wasn't really as amazing as it is right now. So this tank had a lot of armor. We're going to be delving into more detail in just a second with the survivability, the firepower, the mobility, and all of those goodies. But let's talk about when this tank first came out, it just smashed the opponents at those lower tiers. It completely destroyed everyone at tier 6, tier 7, tier 5, and even at tier 8 against certain vehicles. This tank was unstoppable. So everyone bought this vehicle. Everyone got it. I did not get it back then, but I did get it at a later iteration when it was already nerfed. So this tank, obviously its armor, it looked quite a bit different back then with the non-HD model. The armor was incredible against tier 7, tier 6, and even some tier 8 opponents. But when you were going up against tier 9 vehicles and even some tier 8 vehicles with high pen, this tank was just a huge Swiss cheese. It was destroyed in mere seconds because the armor just didn't hold up anymore. The people knew where to shoot, they hit this vehicle, and it just evaporated. Obviously, when the people didn't know where to shoot this tank, it was a huge win for the IS-6 driver. So back in the days, the lower plate was a huge weak spot. The cheeks still are a weak spot. They used to be a weak spot as well. Then you have the cupolas on top, which were an obvious weak spot. The cheeks at the turret at the front were an obvious weak spot. And also the very flat part of the turret, especially if you were a bit higher. German tanks, for example, the Tiger II was just able to go right through there. Everyone was able to go right through there with high explosive even from time to time. So that was quite funny. This has changed quite a bit. So let's take a look at the IS-6 in the year 2021. They actually did buff this tank in the year 2018, so it did get an increase of pen of about 11 millimeters. This was their strategy to actually make this tank viable for non-preferential matchmaking. Same with the KV-5 and all the other vehicles that they wanted to integrate into the normal matchmaker. So the rate of fire is 6.08 rounds per minute. Considering the caliber, 122 millimeter gun, it actually isn't too bad. So that's a reload time of 9.87 seconds. The gun traverse or the turret traverse is actually not too good. It's a Soviet heavy tank. It should not turn its turret way too quickly. So, 25.6 degrees per second. That's what you get. The gun depression 6 degrees is not too bad. 6 degrees of negative gun depression, I should add. So 20 degrees of gun elevation are pretty damn good. So if the gun depression doesn't cut it for you, you used to be able to just drive up a little cliff and then use the gun elevation as your gun depression and be able to shoot towards your enemies. But at the same time, you made yourself very, very vulnerable because your upper armor was just non-existent. So everyone was just able to go right through you. But that's something you can still do, but I would highly advise against it. Just pick a battlefield or a place where there are not a lot of hills and ridges, because the 6 degrees of gun depression is not going to be cutting it for you. Then 2.39 seconds aim time to have fully aimed in circle. That's pretty decent. We do have equipment for that. We have a good crew. So expect it to be in the levels of 2.8, 2.9, maybe even 3.0 seconds. The dispersion is horrible, as you'd expect. 0.41 dispersion at 100 meters. Yeah, this tank is not very accurate. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a close range brawler. Now the DPM is probably one of the best with the KV-5. If you look at the object, the Defender, the 252U, it has way less DPM, 1,836 now. The crew on here isn't very good. The KV-5 has the best DPM. It should have the best DPM, 2.434K. Obviously, that's the best. The IS-3 should have also, all of these vehicles have worse DPM than the IS-6. That you will actually notice when you're playing the IS-6. So I'd say, all in all, the firepower of this vehicle is pretty impressive still, especially considering that it is a preferential matchmaking vehicle. That has not changed. The added pen has made it quite a bit more even, because a lot of tier 8 premiums and a lot of tier 8 vehicles and tier 9s now have a lot of armor. They're quite active and quite good, quite strong. So you're going to have quite a bit of a bad time when you're going up against tier 8 vehicles that, are quite armored, such as you. And 390 alpha, that's what you expect of the 122mm gun. So yeah, the firepower is pretty damn good, still, in my opinion. Only it gets really bad if you're going up against tier 9 vehicles and certain tier 8 opponents, because let's take a look at the gun. It's a 122mm D30. It's kind of unique, they say, but it used to be the same as the D25, or it used to be the D25. You know, every other vehicle has the same kind of gun. So the thing is that the premium shell has 225mm of pen. That's the same. That's the average of the new tier 8 Soviet premium tanks. So you can imagine that, you know, if this tank would get into non-preferential matchmaking, it would actually get a buff in that sense. It still fires APCR. All of the other vehicles, I think, do fire heat. If I'm not mistaken, I'm going to check the 703 because I'm not entirely certain if it's firing heat. Yes, it fires heat. The IS-3A should fire heat. Yeah, and the Defender do fire heat as well. So, no, the Defender actually fires APCR. But obviously, a huge increase in pen. So yeah, the heat is just something you will not see on this tank. That always has been a downside, but you just have to, you know, make do with what you have with the APCR. If you are engaging tanks that are really, really heavily armored, you're going to have a really bad time because it's only 225mm. That's still 40mm increase, but it's not going to be very impressive if you're going up against, for example, a E75. You're just going to have a very bad time. Now, you have 1,550 hit points, horsepower, 1,550 HP. Now, that HP is without any kind of equipment on. You could increase it to probably 1,650, if I'm not mistaken, or almost 1,700 actually. And that would actually not be too bad if we think about it. But still, 1,550 is decent enough, in my opinion, for a Soviet heavy tank. If you consider it with the IS-3A and the Defender, I think it has more HP than those vehicles have, just by a little bit, 50 HP more. But it also doesn't face tier 10 vehicles, so that's a big plus. Now, 110mm of armor. This used to be like the main selling point of this tank. The armor, if we just check it with armor viewer enabled, you can see can be quite thick. So at this angle right here, it's almost 230, 240, and over here it's 250. So it's really, really strong. The side panels or the side skirts or the cheeks, whatever you want to call it, is not very thick. So if you have a good angle like right here, you can actually go through with 200mm of pen. So that's the thing you have to keep in mind. It used to be like the main weak spot of this tank. People just used to fire like right here and go right through the tank. The lower plate used to be a real big weak spot. It still is kind of a weak spot, so it's below 250mm, but still it used to be way worse armored. So people used to be able to go through with Panthers, with like tier 7 vehicles, and that was the one main thing you had to keep in check when you were playing this tank. So also the cheek right here, a weak spot at the right angle. So if you're side scraping with this tank, it's something you shouldn't be doing. To be fair, with a Soviet vehicle, side scraping is not really what they intended for it to be doing. You're supposed to be, or you cannot over angle when you're side scraping. It's supposed to be, you know, front towards enemy, and when they're shooting your sights right there, it's going to be an auto ricochet. So 100mm at the side and 60mm at the rear. This is exactly what you should keep in mind. It has a lot of spaced armor. This is one of those trollish Soviet heavy tanks, very first vehicle that had so much spaced armor that it just absorbed and, you know, sent shells into a different dimension when you shot it from the side. Still is the case, but not as much as it used to be. Then 150mm of frontal turret armor, 150 on the side, 100mm at the rear. That's exactly what you're thinking about when you're talking about Soviet heavy turret armor steel. That's what you get, a lot of armor. So it used to be a big weak spot right here. It still is a bit, 195, but it used to be way worse. Then right here also 194. But if you just get a little bit to the left, it increases quite drastically, and the auto chances of bouncing are going up quite ridiculously, especially if you're quite far off. you're going to be having a bad time of shooting this tank. But let's say tips: if you're fighting a IS-6 frontally in a Löwe, for example, shoot down. The hull is really weak from the front. If you're above it, you can just shoot down 153 millimeters. You go right through. Same with tier 7 vehicles that have good pen and are a bit higher situated than the IS-6. If it's side hugging you or face hugging you and you have the turret in front of your face, you do not have the gun depression, shoot the cupolas on top. The cupolas on top are 151 millimeters thick. I know they're not the very biggest target. If you're a bit higher than he is and you have the right angle, shoot just right at the top of the turret. You're going to be able to go right through. For example, Japanese heavy tanks, German heavy tanks, you're going to be able to really do a lot of damage right there. That's one of the ways how you can deal with an IS-6 if it's face hugging you. So the survivability used to be the one selling point. That coupled with the mobility, which used to be quite impressive for back in the days, 35 kilometers per hour. That was like really impressive for a tier 8 premium tank, especially considering you had the KB5 and the Löwe. The KB5 wasn't as fast back in the days as it is right now, and the IS-6 just was almost on par with the IS-3. Everyone loved the IS-3, and the IS-6 was just 3 kilometers per hour slower. The 13.45 horsepower per ton isn't too bad, but it isn't as impressive, so your acceleration isn't going to be the best. But you can still keep up with certain tanks. And the Traverse is just, yeah, as we already mentioned, it's a Soviet heavy tank. What do you expect of the Traverse? 29.83 degrees per second. It's not going to be changing anything up there, but still, you can turn your tank if you need to. It's just going to take a while. So concealment, spotting, not going to be a strong suit of this vehicle. It has a base view range of 350 meters. We know that a lot of things have changed. Tier 8 premium tanks now have base view ranges of, I don't even know, like more than 380, and that's quite crazy if you imagine that. But the Soviet heavy premium tanks, they don't really have great view range. As you can see, 350 is basically the average for most of the vehicles. So, having said all that, this tank is a preferential matchmaking vehicle. It still is to this day. It's not going to be facing tier 10 vehicles. It's not going to be facing tier 10 tank destroyers. It's going to be maximum facing tier 9 vehicles and tier 8s. So if you get into those matches where you used to be able to dominate against tier 6 and tier 7, 8 opponents, well, you still can get into those matches, but I think it's going to be a bit more difficult. If you're going into tier 8 matches, tier 9 matches, that's probably more the place where you're going to be fighting with this tank. And that's where it's going to be suffering quite a bit. Because the armor, still, it is quite good, still to this day. But, you know, those tanks at tier 8 that have 230 millimeters of pen on average are just going to cut right through you. If you know the weak spots of the IS-6, you're going to be able to deal with this tank. You need the knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge, you're going to be bouncing like an idiot of this tank. Because if the player knows how to deal with bounces, knows how to deal with tanks that have better pen, you know, the IS-6 is just, how can I say, the IS-6 at lower tier is a really good tank. It's really powerful. At higher tiers, it's just going to get wrecked. That's exactly how they intended it to be. This frustration curve is something that Wargaming is really good at, and something that they are really, that they implemented into the game to keep these players from, you know, to keep these players frustrated and not always happy, because if they're always happy, they're not going to be paying more money to be spending, you know, to be buying things that make them better so that they can compete more and really have more of an awesome feeling instead of a bad downer feeling. But still, the IS-6, it's a legendary tank, and we're going to check out a gameplay, maybe 2 gameplays, to see what this vehicle is really all about in World of Tanks in the year 2021. So bear with me, we're going to go over, we're going to check out some replays, and we're going to see what really makes this tank and what breaks this tank. So I'll see you guys in the gameplay in just a second. So guys, I've been thinking about it. I've had 2 baller games, one at tier 9, one at tier 8, that I really want to show you guys. So this video is going to be really, really long, because both battles didn't end just like after 4 minutes. That's exactly what I've kind of been missing in World of Tanks, like the battles that last a bit longer, where you really get into the rough of it. And yeah, that's exactly what we are going to be doing. This is basically the ideal setup that you can have. Just 4 tier 8 vehicles in general, 4 versus 4, and the rest of them are just tier 7s and tier 6s. So yeah, 3 artilleries on both sides, on the other hand, though, is a bit of a problem, but you can make it work. So the IS-6, as already mentioned, with the armor layout that it has at this kind of tier, it's not really going to be running into any kind of problems except for maybe the tier 7s and tier 8s, if even from the tier 7s. But if you can work with your armor and you know the nooks and crannies of this tank, you can really be a massive, a crazy cool vehicle that just can be very, very flexible in almost all kinds of situations. You just need to be able to adjust. You need to be flexible. So right here, we're going over to the heavy tank alley, and you notice that we are leaving the northern part of the map quite open because I am not kind of feeling very, how should I put it? I'm not feeling very confident in pushing an open field with the IS-6. Although I do have all the armor, I am not going to be able to be very combat effective out there because of my range, my limited view range, and the limited amount of support that I would have. Also, I would be out in the open with 3 artillery pieces facing me. So what I would much rather like to do right here is to just, shoot at a unpenetrable object 703 122 and bounce off of it. The problem right here is kind of that we know that frontally we're not going to be able to pen this guy with standard ammo, but right there we absorb a shot because we are angling it correctly. If he is firing at us right here, he's gonna have a bit of a tough time going right through us, but we're not going to be risking it anymore because this engagement is not very I would say it's nonsensical because it doesn't make any sense for us to be engaging the 705 or 703 at the front when we can just go around. What we've noticed is there's a T-150 in the middle, there's an Achilles in the middle, and our team just managed to destroy an IS-2, which is a very dangerous tier 8 heavy tank, but we're kind of taking a lot of losses. So I notice, you know what, I'm in an IS-6, this tank has some mobility. Why not just go around, be a bit of a nuisance from behind, and we can do some real damage with the rate of fire that we have in this tank. The rate of fire isn't actually too bad, especially if you manage to pen your shots. Your rate of fire is actually quite damn good. Unfortunately, we have a T-71 CMCD behind us, which kind of foils our plans, and he does spot us, and he does take out, I think, the T-34-85. But we managed to get behind them. It's not looking very good at the moment, but we managed to get behind them. And there's a Tiger P. He's completely oblivious. We put 1 into him. I think we don't really track him, but we do damage. So he's very low. We wait for our reload. It's, as already mentioned, 9.8 seconds. We take him out of the game, and he is done. That is a tier 7 vehicle that could have been quite a bit of a pain in the ass because he had the long 88mm gun, and he would have been able to pen us. We know that there is a SU-100 behind us, but he must be AFK because he doesn't move. Now we have our very first challenge. It's a 122 TM. We know the rate of fire on this tank is horrendous. And we're hoping for, a good hull shot. Unfortunately, I make a big mistake right there. I shoot him while he turns his vehicle, but I do get some assistance from the T-71DA. And this 122 decides to turn around and engage the T-71DA, which is awfully weird. Now, check this out. I just set him on fire. And this is something that is going to be happening quite a few times in this video today. I don't know what happened, but I'm firing standard rounds, and I set this T-122 TM on fire. So right here we have still 2 very dangerous tanks. The 112, we set him on fire. He has an automatic fire extinguisher with him. We set him on fire. I load an APCR shell because I want to be able to pen him. I aim at the direct same spot again. I set him on fire again. He must have a really good crew against fires because it must be happening to him quite often. We bounce a heat shell because we are angling our armor. So right there he was unable to go right through. I'm not sure where he hit us. Must be the upper plate. And now it's a really weird scenario because it's actually a 5 versus 3 situation. The T-37 comes in, he almost gets the T-71, but we shut him out, or we shut him down. And now they have 2 artillery pieces, an AFK SU-100 that has started to move, and a 703 version, or 703-2. And we have a Renegade that's almost full HP, and an IS-6. So the Renegade made a really smart move previously. He moved away from the 703, and he decided to shoot him from the rear. And the 703 now has a 2-front situation where he can't really decide on what to focus on. So I move in. I can see that his tail or his ass is showing towards me. So I'm just going to go in from behind, put one into his side, luckily get the tracking shot, and I think the Renegade finishes him off. So that leaves us now with 2 artillery pieces, 1 SU-100, and us almost being full HP. We've bounced 780 damage, and we've managed to flank around with an IS-6. They didn't expect that flank, and that flank was quite important for us because we managed to shut down the Tiger, the 122 TM, the 112, and in the end, the 703. And if we were just, going in from the front and relying completely on our armor, we probably would have just gotten completely pummeled by the 703 because it's just a better tank. But we managed to play smart. We took out the artillery, so now it's an easy 2v2, 2 tier 8s versus 2 tier 6 vehicles. And I know that the SU-100 is going to be somewhere out there. He's going to be driving around. I know that the M44 is not going to be moving because artillery doesn't move in this game. They hate moving. That's what I've noticed from arty players. Artillery players just don't like to move their tanks. I'm going to give you a guess. He's going to be sitting somewhere in the back. That's exactly where I'm going. I'm going to go for artillery first because I want to get the Top Gun medal. This Renegade, I'm not even sure where this Renegade was the entire game. I didn't know that we had a Renegade, but he's still almost full HP. So in the end, we did everything correctly and we managed to wipe the tier 8 vehicles off the map. So I'm just going to, press forward a little bit so we can get faster to the end. You can see that the artillery is hiding right here in the corner. That's what artillery really likes to do. And we managed to take him out. We take a little bit of time, but we do get the kill in the end. So that's almost 4k damage dealt. And the SU-100, which is really weird. I had the feeling that the SU-100 was a bit of a bot because he didn't move at first. And now I'm like right in front of him and he's not shooting me. He's just looking at me. He's swiveling his gun and he's just looking at me. So I have the feeling that this SU-100 is a bot. So in the end, we managed to do 4,621 damage, and we do take the win for us. I'm just going to take a real quick screenshot of this, and we're going to move on to the next game. I promise, guys, this is the last game. This is the last one, and we're facing a game that an opponent or several opponents that you'll find yourself in a few times in the IS-6. Now, I've played like about 5 games and I've had like 4 of them or 3 of them were tier 8s and tier 6 vehicles or tier 7s. And then 2 of them I was facing against tier 9s, and this was certainly the best tier 9 game I had. And yeah, so you can see we're playing on the map Cliff, and we have several tier 9 vehicles that are against us and with us. So this is a situation where your IS-6 is just not going to be as on par as in the last video. You're not going to be as combat effective with your armor, with your gun, as you were against tier 7, tier 6 vehicles, obviously because of the tier difference. So right here, my plan is to actually push into the middle, where I think, in my opinion, we're fast enough to go to E3 and then just really annihilate the guys from the side because we still have some armor. Now, the biggest downside to this is that we don't have a lot of gun depression and we do not have the best accuracy, so at range we're going to be quite useless. But the thing is, we spotted T-30, we managed to take out the WZ-120, that's the very first kill, and our WZ-120 also survives that encounter. There's a Scorpion G as well, and they're actually engaging our guys that are coming in right behind me. They have chosen, or they've decided to actually move in a bit slower, and I unfortunately block this entire passageway, so I make place right there. But you can see that they're was quite a lot of firepower on that line, and we managed to push right through because this tank is not the slowest. It can still go to places fast enough to be maybe the second or third vehicle. So right there we spot the Progetto 66. This is an Italian tier 9 vehicle, and we put one big shot into him. 369 damage. We fall back, we move back up again, and the gun depression, as I already mentioned, 6 degrees is pretty good for a Russian tank. Unfortunately, the Progetto 44 does take that kill shot away from us, so that big damage shot that we would have had. But the rate of fire, as you can see, the 9 rounds, or like, not 9 rounds, the 9.8 seconds reload time per shot is actually not too bad for the caliber of the gun that we have. It's actually quite impressive. So right here, you can see that there are several tanks behind the corner. There's the Object 703, there's the Progetto 66, and there's the Conqueror over there. So I'm a bit worried about them moving around the corner and shooting me, because they're going to be able to do some damage to me. I've loaded a high explosive shell previously to be able to do some damage to the Progetto 66, because it would have been quite difficult right there. But as you can see, there is no shot that I can take where I can really do damage, so I do decide to track him, and the Progetto 66 manages to finish him off. So we get some assistance damage right there. So all in all, our plan has been working pretty well so far. And yeah, moving on, you can see that there is a SDRV 103. We somehow managed to hit that that shot. That was ridiculous. But we take a massive hit from the Conqueror, and that's what you notice, that as soon as they have a shot on you, well, they're going to be able to pen you, especially at tier 9. They're going to be very, very much so quite strong with those APCR shells. But so far you can see our team has a bit of an advantage. We have the very important positions on the map. We do not control the corner around the hill, but we are still able to hold them at bay and you know, have the view lines and the firing lines. Now unfortunately, this is something that you'll see quite a few times when you're playing the IS-6. The accuracy is very limited, and here I make a big mistake. So I can see that there's a Bad Chat 25T AP up there and a Burasque. They're going to be a big problem for us, because they will counter, and they will counter us, and they will spot us the entire time. Our T103 is going to get taken out, I think, in just a second. Something is going to knock him out. Probably the Conqueror, but I think he dies in just a second. So I'm trying to get a shot off the Burasque, because right now we are in a bit of a stalemate. People are trying to see what they can do. You know, they're just trying to see where they can deal damage and where they can get the least amount of damage in return. So people are trading at the moment. This is really nice, because we don't have any artillery, so the game has kind of dwindled into this position where we're trying to see where we can get an advantage on the flank. And actually our left side right there has lost quite a few tanks, because they were a bit too aggressive, and yeah, they were taken out. I'm trying to actually get a hit on the Conqueror and you know, do some damage to him. Unfortunately, I move up too far, and this tank is not going to be too fast. You can see I'm like wiggling my turret, saying, no, please don't shoot me. And he's obviously going to be able to go right through our armor, because it is a Stridswagen 103. So I noticed that the AA phase 1 down there is completely on his own. A T-30 right next to him. I'm trying to assist him right there, but he manages to survive on his own just as well. The Conqueror decides to move in, because he senses that this is the perfect time to switch the flank, to put some pressure on us, and I'm waiting for him. I have an AP shell loaded, and I'm going to load an APCR shell, but luckily the Conqueror's armor on the lower plate is really, really thin, but he's firing APCR, so he's going to be able to hit us anywhere and deal damage to us. So the next shot is going to be essential that we hit that one. We managed to take out the Conqueror. We destroy a very dangerous tank for us, and right there we win this flank. So basically for us, this was really important. What's really important now is that nobody comes over to us, and we can support this AE phase 1 when the VK comes in, or the Tiger 2, or maybe somebody comes over to us. We only have 350 HP, and basically we're one shot for everyone in this game, except for the Burasque. No, actually the Burasque, it's also a one shot for the Burasque, because the Burasque has 360 alpha damage, so if he manages to pen us with APCR, we're going to be down. So right there, they're trying to push the Progetto 66, the Batchet 25T, runs in there, gets knocked out by the Leopard Prototype A, and this is the big issue that you have with the IS-6. The accuracy is just not there, right? So that hit was just nowhere to be seen. Unfortunately, we do not hit him. And also the armor, the ammo that you have 37 shots or 37 shells in your tank. These 37 shells are actually, I'd say, enough for a battle, but it used to be 30 shells, and you miss those shells. Those 7 additional shells you do miss when you're playing this game. So look that you have a lot of AP and quite a few shells of APCR. Unfortunate right there. AMX-30 moves in. We hit him, and we actually set him on fire, which is really, really lucky for us. We bounce his shot. That's what you can do on an IS-6, even at tier 9. He is focusing on a Batchet 25T, and I move forward, and I get so lucky. I actually ammo wreck him. I first set him on fire, and then I ammo wrecked him. And the last few games, I like set like 5 guys on fire. With this guy included, I set 5 people on fire in like 2 games, and which that is absolutely ridiculous if you think about it. So we take out the AMX-30. He was full HP. He was coming in hot. And we just did an additional 820 damage from that explosion, and it was basically 1600 damage from that one kill. So yeah, we're almost up there with combined total damage of 3806. This is something that you can really do in an IS-6, and I don't think it would be possible in the Defender, because the Defender is not as nimble, it doesn't have the rate of fire that the IS-6 has, and that's just what makes this tank like such an impressive and like such a beast, like still years after it has been released. I know it isn't like the strongest tier A premium tank, but it still has these qualities to it that are just so impressive. And right here you can see how quickly, in like 2 minutes we were able to turn the tables completely around, and now it's all about for us to actually take out the VK and the Tiger II and get this STRV 103 out of the middle. And now we have to see what can we do. I want to support the A phase 1 with the VK 101 and the Tiger II, because it's the last position where they're actually in a stronghold or where they can hold. We know that there's a STRV S1 that hasn't been spotted, so it must be somewhere in the back. So I decide to actually drop down here, and I do notice that the A phase 1 is going to be eliminated in just a second. I think just as I move down here, he's going to get knocked out by the Stritzwagen or something like that, because I do remember that, because I'm kind of stuck down here. So right there you can see the Stritzwagen takes him out, and if we take a look at the angle and how much cover this guy has, we have to know that the Stritzwagen must be sitting somewhere at D1 or C1, probably D1. So I noticed that there's a T30 in front of me. I'm using this guy as cover, and I do get lit up in a second. So I know that the Stritzwagen is right in that bush right in front of me. I can show you guys the bush real fast. So this bush right here is a bush that a lot of people like to use. So the Stritzwagen is exactly here. He sees us right there. That's a bush that a lot of people like to use to control this area of the map. So if you're not careful and you're up here and you're shooting at the guys at the hill from right over here, this guy over there can actually poke you. He can shoot you. So this is something that is not possible over here, because this bush right here, there's a large rock, but this rock and the bush, they do not allow you to actually shoot all over here. It's kind of a bit of an unbalanced situation. So unfortunately we know that the Stritzwagen is over there, the 103, but right now for us it's just important that the team can move around to the Stritzwagen S1, take that guy out, and then for us to be able to push the VK and the Tiger II. But this game was a lot of, we did a lot of damage, and we got 4 kills, and we were able to hold that place, and that was quite impressive. So unfortunately for us, the IS-6 in this position right here is not going to be very useful, and we're not strong enough or heavy enough to push this T30 over and use him as active camo or active cover. And I do know that if I move out here, I'm going to be dead. So I'm expecting the Stridswagen 103 to be over there. So you can see the Bat Chat is moving in now. He's going to flank the Tiger 2. But actually the VK is over there. So I expect the VK to be the one spotting us. But I actually should have not doubted myself, because I knew that the Stridswagen was there and killed the AE phase 1. So he must be there. Unfortunately, I gave him a little bit too much of my side. And he actually manages to take us out. So now it's a 2 versus 4 situation. This situation it's pretty clear that my team is going to be winning this if they move in all at once. If they go one by one, it's going to be a very different story. But if they move in as a group, as they are doing right now, they're going to be able to do quite a bit of damage and win this game for us. So right there you can see they spotted the VK. I think the the Leo gets him out of the game. And now they're looking for the Stridswagen 103, who had a pretty good game, was very stealthy, and that reposition was could have been a game changer if he did that earlier. But it took him a little bit too long. The middle area was where they lost a lot of their vehicles, and that corner right there. But still, I'd say we played it really well. And just as Hannibal said in the A team, I just love when a plan works itself out. I'm not entirely sure what he said, but you know what? We're gonna put a little clip of that in this video in just a second, because I absolutely love the A team. I used to watch it with my grandpa all the time back in the days. So yeah, we're gonna be moving over to the IS-6 real fast. We're gonna be talking about like the final verdict on this vehicle. And yeah, let's see.
What's it say?
Well, it says, I love it when a plan comes together.
So what can we say about the IS-6? As you could see in those two gameplays, you can have really good games in this tank. It still can hold its own, especially with the preferential matchmaking that it has. It still is a beast in its right place. I think what used to be the thing, that the IS-6 was just such a vehicle that was so forgiving to new players. And I think it isn't as forgiving as it used to be. That is certainly now the very noob-friendly 2Object 252 use Defender's job. That's no longer the IS-6 job. So the IS-6 no longer has that super crazy protection that it once used to have if you compare it to Defender. That doesn't mean that it is a bad tank. It doesn't mean that it's no longer a viable option. The IS-6 still has great padding, so it's still for like newcomers and veterans, it still is a great experience. If you like Soviet tanks, you will like this vehicle. If you like the heavy tank gameplay of a brawling fast or like somehow mobile heavy tank, you will enjoy this vehicle. If you don't like heavy tanks that are kind of, you know, inaccurate and their pen is not like the best attribute, this is not going to be a vehicle you're going to be enjoying, especially if you don't like heavy tanks that are brawling out there. This is a tank that you can really make work for you. This is a workhorse that you can make work for you if you just, you know, give it a bit of time. But I think this is a very forgiving tank still. You saw that like in the previous two gameplays. I was able to deal quite significant amounts of damage and get quite a few kills even against tier 9 opponents just by playing smart. If you play it smart, you can really make this tank work. You don't even have to dip into the premium ammo type if you play it smart. You could see I only fired like 2 or 3 premium shells in that game, in those two games, going up against tier 9 vehicles and tier 8s. You just have to be smart. If you're smart about it, you're going to have a good time with this tank. But obviously there are sometimes going to be situations where you are going to be face to face with tier 9 vehicles where you just can't flank around, where you can't use your mobility to your advantage, or where you can't really neglect the very low amount of pen that you have, and where you are going to be just basically a target, like a HP pinata, and that's just something that you have to get used to. But it's not going to be happening every time, so the IS-6 is still a pretty damn good vehicle. Even in the year 2021, I'd still recommend the IS-6 as a tank. Now, obviously, the Defender, the 703, the IS-3A, they are all different types of this vehicle, better in like certain aspects. For example, if you want more firepower, the IS-3A or the Object 703 would be good additions for your garage. But if you want all the armor that you can get, the Defender or the Object 252U will be great additions. But I still like this tank. I like the IS-6, and I think I had the most joy playing this tank if we compare it to the IS-3 and the Defender. But still, yeah. Would I recommend this tank in 2021? Yes. Do I like this tank? Yes. Is it better than the KB5? Yes, but the KB5 is just even more fun in my opinion. So hopefully you guys like this review. I know it's been a bit of a longer one. I'm going to dwindle it down in the next one, but I really wanted to be thorough with this legend, and I hope you guys have a good one, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.